Hello, everybody. Thank you again. We welcome you to the third part of our Women's Suffrage Centennial series. Once again, my name is Catherine Sibley. I work for the Girl Scouts here in Nevada. And helping me, I have Paula is kind of helping monitor the weight room. I have Jessica and Anika are kind of helping with the chat log. So as you noticed, I believe you all are muted. If you want to communicate with us, we're going to ask that you type in the chat log. Otherwise, trying to have 50 people talk at the same time can be a little confusing.
How do I connect the AirPods? Oh, never mind.
All right. I thought we, Jessica, can you check to make sure we mute everybody's muted?
I'm looking right now.
Anyway, let me move on to the next one. So to start out, once again, we're going to do the Girl Scout Promise and the Girl Scout Law. So please place up your right hand like this and read with me, or say it with me. On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. Good job. Next is the Girl Scout law. This is a little bit longer. Hands back up. Excuse me. I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, and responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authority, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout. Good job, everybody. Okay, so before we get into, before we talk with our speaker today, I wanted to tell you about something we have coming up. It's the Women's Suffrage Centennial March. Now, this is kind of a separate thing we're doing. We just want to have a big hurrah party to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which allowed for, gave women the right to vote. So we, hold on, let me get my write-up here. So here's what we want to do. We're going to do it on a Saturday, August 15th. So what we want you to do is to dress up like a suffragette. In other words, someone from 1920, if you can. If not, you can do a Girl Scout uniform too, but we would really love to see some 1920s clothes. Because we're gonna have a virtual march. So you can do this from your bedroom, your front yard, your driveway, your backyard, your kitchen, wherever you can get Zoom access and we can see you, because we wanna see your costumes. And one more thing, we'd really like you to make some sort of 1920, it could be a poster, a banner, a sign, something that a suffragette would have used in 1920 to say, hey, we need the right to vote. So we're aiming for 1920. 1920s clothes, if you can do it, and some sort of banner or sign or something, 1920. So like I said, this is going to be on Saturday, August 15th. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Nevada time, which is Pacific time. If this sounds like something that's interesting to you, have your adult go onto our website to find out more information and to register for it. It doesn't cost you anything. We just want to see that you're registered so that we can send you a Zoom link a few days beforehand. Before I move on, do we have any questions about that in the chat log?
There are girls who are asking what the outfits of the 1920s looked like. I don't know if you Wanted to pull up some pictures really quick.
Okay, tell you what, I do have them, but for me to access them, it's gonna take a few minutes. So tell you what, next time around on Thursdays, I will have some ready to go for you. Okay, any other questions related to that? No? Okay, I can't remember what my next slide is. Let's find out. Oh, there we go. So before I hand this off to Heather, who's Heather Carmen, the Assistant Registrar of Voters for Washoe County in Nevada, I would just like to say thank you for coming. And also, I know we have this scheduled to run until 4:30. If you have lots of questions and Heather wants to stay on and you want to keep asking questions after 4:30, that's fine. But if you need to get off, you can go ahead and just get off the call. I understand if you have other things you need to do. Do we have any more questions in the chat log for me before I hand it over to Heather? Okay, so give me a moment. I'm going to stop sharing and we're gonna have to, and I hope we have this on, Paula, do we have this on speaker view? I hope, or spotlight view? I'm gonna stop sharing and we're gonna see if we can hand this over to Heather. Okay. And I'm going to mute myself. Okay, Heather Carmen. Hello.
Hello, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Heather Carmen. I'm the Assistant Registrar of Voters for Washoe County. I've been in this department since 2009, and I'm pleased to be here to talk about the importance and how easy it is to become a registered voter. In the state of Nevada, actually throughout the country, there are standard rules or requirements or eligibility requirements for somebody to become a registered voter. You must be 18 by election day. You must be a US citizen. And in some states, like in ours, you must be residing in our state for at least 30 days before the election. You're not required to have an identification, but some states do require that you have a social security number, because when you do register to vote, when you fill out that application, we do have to be able to verify your identity, and we verify your residential address, because it's important when you register that we get the right address so that we give you the right ballot to vote on. Ballots are very specific to the areas that you live in. You'll be voting on various, candidates that affect your everyday life and not just the big race like the presidential race. There are many different ways to get registered to vote. There's the paper application that you can fill in and mail in. You can visit an elections office or a clerk's office, depending on where you live, what it's called. Lots of places offer online voter registration. Our state offers their own online portal where you can register to vote. There are other organizations that also assist with online voter registration. And some of these organizations also send reminder text messages specific to your jurisdiction of upcoming important dates. Because you need to know, when is the last day maybe to request an absentee ballot, or when does early voting start in my location? When is the last time to update my registration information? Registering to vote to me is kind of like the easy part. You're filling out a form, you get on the voting rolls, we send you election materials, your sample ballot, things like that. The hard part comes when you have to, when you go to vote, because you need to do the research on the candidates. And there's some, some people don't know that when you do show up to vote, you don't have to vote on every single race or answer every single question. So, but registering is the easy part, and we encourage everybody to do that, as soon as they turn 18. And in some states, you can actually pre-register when you're 17. A lot of schools, high schools, will provide that opportunity to their students. trying to think of what else you guys might be interested in knowing about voter registration. So is there any questions that maybe I can field at this time? Because I like to know what you guys are interested in knowing about elections and voter registration.
Heather, this is Paula. How do you make sure that a person that is voting is eligible to vote?
That's a very good question. When we do receive an application, we do cross-check it with Social Security and the Department of Motor Vehicles to make sure that they're a real person. Trust me, we've received applications with some pretty funny names on there and date of birth. And we still have to write a letter to that person just in case there is somebody called Harry Butts when there really isn't. And they end up not being on the voter registration rolls. So Mr. Butts will not be able to vote. Or some people try to see if maybe they can register their dog. That can't happen. We cross-check our voter registration rolls with Department of Motor Vehicles and Social Security to make sure they're an actual person. Then we send out what's called a voter notification card to make sure it's a real address, because if it's not, the United States Postal Service will return it to us.
So I have a question. Why would someone want to register their dog or fake a name when they're voting?
Some people just want to see if there's any holes in our process, if there's voter or election fraud. Some people might, try to stuff the ballot box type kind of scenario. They're trying to get, a lot more on the voting registration rolls. And some people are just trying to be silly, I think. But when you're doing that, if you get caught, that is actually a felony, and they could be charged criminally for filling out a voter registration application fraudulently, because they are legal documents.
Could you explain what a felony is to everybody, please?
Sure. When an individual commits a crime, when they break the law, there are different degrees. Getting a traffic ticket is minor. It's a misdemeanor. But when you have a more serious infraction, that's called a felony, and you can do prison time or be charged with a very large fine. You may have your voting rights barred forever in some states when you've committed a felony. So it's, in our state's a little bit different when it comes to felonies or people that have existing felonies, but yeah, that's what can happen. It's not something that you want to get, because that felony charge will stay with you forever and can impact your life in many ways.
Another question. How do you know if people are 18 or older?
Well, again, when they fill out that voter registration application, Social Security or the Department of Motor Vehicles, we verify their name, their date of birth, and their ID numbers. All three of those things have to be cross-checked. So if an individual tries to register and fake their date of birth on there, like I know some people do on social media, you can't do that with voter registration, because it will come back as a mismatch, and then that person will not be placed on the voting rolls. So that's how we were able to do that. Again, it gets cross-checked with the Department of Motor Vehicles and Social Security.
Someone else asked in the chat if you are allowed to vote if you are a felon.
In some states, yes, you are allowed in some states to vote if you have a felony conviction. Some states do not allow that. So it is state by state on that one. Here in the state of Nevada, as long as you are not in prison, you can be out on parole or probation. It doesn't matter the criminal charge. You are eligible to register and vote. In other states, it's a lot more stricter. Some have their rights completely taken away and are not able to register. Some people want it to be more concise across, the whole country, because they feel that's disenfranchisement of certain individuals that should have the opportunity to vote. But that's a state by state law.
We're listening to you. We're going through questions and looking
Okay.
at the backlog, so we're not completely.
So Heather, you kind of glossed over what stuff the ballot box means, because we're talking about security and who can vote. So can you tell us maybe where that came from? Because for digital folks, stuff the ballot box doesn't mean anything. So can you kind of tell us what that means and where it came from?
Oh boy, I just know I've heard it as a term. I wish I knew the history behind that. You got me on that one. I believe it's because in the past when we actually did more paper voting,
That's right.
it was, there was malicious actors, creating extra ballots and stuffing the ballot box because they wanted to see a certain candidate win, or certain groups or organizations like employment unions and things would want to see a certain candidate advance on. So stuff the ballot box was a term.
Well, part of that was because there was physically a ballot box, physically, where on your way out, you would physically put your hand-stamped ballot in a ballot box. And so people would go to different areas and vote in different areas. And so they would stuff the ballot box with their favorite candidate. And so there was physically a ballot box at one time.
Yeah, it's definitely different now. Our state uses, basically they look like huge iPads or iPhones that are touchscreen and that people can cast their ballot in. We actually save it on a USB stick. And we also have a paper audit trail. So plus the other security that we have is once somebody checks in to appear to vote, they're marked that way and they can't appear somewhere else and vote again. So there are securities now in place that once a person has cast their ballot, it's done. If they try to do it at another location, or maybe even send us a paper ballot, because we do have mail-in ballots, it does get caught and it won't be counted. And then we turn that over to the authorities to investigate and prosecute the individual.
So I'm wondering, do you have an idea of whether people will be able to go out and vote, or is it just going to be paper voting? Do you have any thoughts or ideas as to what's going to happen?
That's a very good question. And we, here in the state of Nevada, we're holding a second special session with the legislator session with the governor and all of our representatives. Thursday is when they start it, and they're going to be discussing what our plan is for this upcoming election. We are going to have in-person voting. However, it will be with precautions put in place because of COVID. We are upping our presence or letting people know about mail-in ballots, because the state of Nevada is not one of those states that automatically mails a ballot to all registered voters. They have to request it in our state if they want to receive a paper ballot. Whether or not this election we're going to be mailing everybody a ballot and having in person, it's still undecided, and we're 98 days out from the election. So kind of need to know.
Okay, so you can probably only tell us this for Washoe County or Nevada, but maybe you might know this on more of a nationwide scale. Let's say for like a presidential election year, such as this one, you have any idea about an average percentage of people that actually vote?
Here in Washoe County, it's typically close to 80% of the individuals that are registered on our voting rolls. It's very high. There's always a high turnout in a presidential year, which is awesome. Midterm elections, though, are just as important. Last election cycle, 2018, we saw the highest turnout ever for one of our midterm elections. It's important to participate in every single election, primary, general. These are the individuals that are making choices about, your life going forward. And you don't want to lose that power or lose that voice that, we have struggled for, over 100 years ago or 100 years ago that this battle started for us to have that voice. We need to make sure that we maintain it and keep it up and make sure that our concerns are addressed by the candidates that we vote into office.
Can you elaborate on just what the midterm election is for the girls who don't know?
Okay, yeah. The midterm election is typically the other federal offices that affect your state, your congressmen, your other representatives. There are other federal and state and local offices that also appear in the primary, not just, in the midterm, and not just in a presidential year. Those particular candidates, they're the ones that, are working in the White House, alongside the president, that, you need to also know what their stance is and whether or not they're going to speak to what, you want to be, heard at the Congress level. Make it in terms that make sense. I hope I am.
I understood it. It was good. No, I love that. So unfortunately, so we have a lot of girls here who probably aren't yet old enough to vote. But is there any other way they can still somehow get involved or do anything to help on that process, be civically engaged?
Can they vote with their mom and dad?
Oh, definitely. Can definitely vote with their mom and dad. I heard that question. We love it when we have
or is it mom and dad have
their
own individual vote, so the kid has to wait for their turn to vote?
I think she kind of got cut off there, but I know in our jurisdiction, we encourage parents, grandparents, guardians to bring, individuals in the voting booth with them, like, minors, their grandkids, their own children. And it is okay that, the child or whoever's in the voting booth actually help make the selections, on the touch screen and be part of the process, because we want your guardians, your parents, your grandparents to discuss, the process of voting and what candidates you plan on voting for and why. And then and then going down to the polling location doing it. Or if they have a paper ballot that they're going to turn in, sit down and go over it and talk about it. And, you can help them, make their choices, as long as, they're the ones signing it and returning it. But we definitely do encourage that. I know in the past, before COVID was something that we had to deal with, the Boy Scouts here in Washoe County used to come and help us set up our equipment. And that was really nice, because on election eve, we have a lot of stuff that we have to put into a school gymnasium. Mm-hmm. And for you guys to come in and help us set up our stations for voters to come check in, or on election day, you could be handing out stickers to the voters that got done, casting their ballot. We had things, now it's a little bit tougher, but definitely have those conversations with your family about, why do you guys vote? Or maybe why don't you vote? And, take it from there, because I believe that if a family is going out and participating in voting, then I know you guys will see that as being important, and you will do that as well.
So Olivia S. from Troop, 4090. She says, I have a question. Can I say it, please? So she wanted to unmute herself.
My question is that, like, what happens if you're running and you try to, like, vote for yourself?
That is actually okay. You can, if you're running for office, you can vote for yourself. When you do vote, it's actually completely anonymous and nobody knows what you voted for, because on the ballot, it just has a precinct number. Your name, there's no identifying mark to associate, who voted that ballot, because it's a secret ballot. Nobody needs to know who you voted for. That is your choice. So when you do cast your ballot, it doesn't have your name associated with it. Like when I go to vote, it doesn't say Heather Carmen voted this. It just has my precinct number, and that's all that matters. Because we also want to make sure there's also no voter intimidation or coercion at the polls. So like one of the things that you don't get when you go to vote is a receipt of your ballot of what you cast. We want to make sure that other organizations or individuals aren't trying to like, oh, let me give you $10 if you vote for Bob Smith, but you have to give me proof. So there has to be, you have to feel comfortable casting your ballot and your choices. You need to make sure that you don't have anybody intimidating you to vote a certain way. And that's, one of the reasons why it's a secret ballot. It's nobody's business how you vote. And if you want to share how you vote, that's up to you.
Heather,
Go ahead, Paula.
for November, will we just be voting on people, or will we be voting on other things?
Well, here in the state of Nevada, we will also have questions that we'll be voting on. I haven't seen them yet. I just know that they're in the pipeworks of other things that will change our state laws. I know during one election cycle, the question that we voted on was whether or not we should legalize marijuana in our state. There are other questions that might come up. Ironically, should we be paying an extra tax on feminine hygiene products? And those types of issues do come up. So we will have some statewide questions. Sometimes we have local questions, like should we put a tax on gasoline to pay for driver's license for the DMV, or bond questions for schools. So we always typically seem to have questions in a general election, every general election, not in our primary elections.
Okay, Anika and Jessica, do we see any more questions in the chat log? Did you guys, I don't know, I'm kind of looking at it and half listening. Do we have anything else? Because I know our time is about up. Do you guys see anything?
I see a question that says, what if you run for president and you tell people to vote for the other person? I'm not sure if I've ever seen that before, but
I thought that was a movie one time. Don't vote for me. Wasn't that a people put their name on the ballot for various reasons. I mean, and maybe they don't want people to vote for them. When we have candidate filing in our office, it's interesting that some people will wait to the very last minute. They'll ask, okay, what office is still, there's nobody that's filed for it. And they'll go, okay, am I eligible? Well, great, let me just file for that office. Just because they want to see their name on the ballot. They don't actually want to run for the office. And one candidate that filed during this election, he didn't realize how large the district he was going to be responsible for. When he ran for school district trustee G, he just thought it was a small portion of Washoe County. He didn't realize it was actually half of Washoe County. So it's interesting, the candidates that decide to toss their name into the ring. Presidential candidates, though, to get your name on the ballot in all the states is not an easy task. It's not that simple, especially if you're running as a minor political party. The major political parties have their presidential preference primaries or caucuses to nominate their choice. But running as maybe a minor party or an independent, each state has their different deadlines and ways that maybe for you to get on the ballot. Sometimes you have to circulate a petition in order to gain ballot access for some offices.
Hello. Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's about wraps it up for us. So, and I know, unless anybody has other questions, but otherwise, I think I say you've given everybody a lot to think about.
Okay.
For sure.